Let's follow that trader here and see what's lying behind that gate. I do think it's a Xenon sector, because I'm playing with the clustered Xenon, so they should hang out in one place of the galaxy map. Yep. Ships are coming here to die, it seems. Crap ton of loot and a bunch of Xenon corvettes. This corporation trader here is actually safe, because these private corps are neutral to everyone, including the Xenon, I believe. That's just to give a last resort trading faction. If all the empires lose their trade ships, then these guys can still keep the economy going. Even if that's a bit weird. But it helps the flow of the game. So the Argons had really bad luck when they got placed here by the game. Pirate bases all around, Xenon sectors in the area. No wonder they have a hard time. But they are currently attacking the split, so I want to take a quick look how that is progressing. I don't really think that they can do much, because the other empires are so much bigger. That means they have much more fleets. So they won't get big again without our help. And they're fighting. Seems like we got a split destroyer and a bunch of corvettes. I don't think the Argons can make that. Got a bailed ship here. Yeah, they're getting really hammered here. I could also talk about the changes to the NPC's laser loadouts, but maybe do that in a bigger fight, because factions are using entirely new sets of lasers. My goals were to make these factions a bit more distinct, so less randomness during the weapon selection. At the beginning of a new game, the factions get a template for each ship they are using, and that template, including the weapons, is random, and it gets used for the rest of the game, so it is quite significant. And I just wanted to make the factions a bit more likely to use certain racial specific weapons, just to give them a bit more flavor, make them a bit more unique. But you also have to be careful because the weapon loadouts are actually playing a major role in the global power struggle. So if a faction has a lot more powerful guns in their ships, then of course they will fare a lot better during these fights. And so that was a second goal, to keep a certain balance without washing it all down so that all factions are basically equal. That is not the case, or at least that should not be the case. So you got a slight randomness, and when the factions are rolling their guns, the guns they are using at the beginning of a game, then they could end up with better or worse selections. It's all a bit random, and I hope that we can see more variety in the strength level of the factions. So for example, with the standard Mayhem balance, the split here always seemed to have a huge advantage for some reason. So mostly the split were the faction which got quite big and conquered all the other empires and stuff like that. And I believe this also had to do with the weapons they had. And you have to take the whole faction into account, so not just individual ships, but the whole faction. So for example, their corvettes are quite limited in the weapon selection. This heavy dragon here can only mount their racial specific ion shot railgun. And I know not all players will like this, but things like that were necessary to make the factions more balanced. So I wanted to find a certain weapon which is well suited for the ship in terms of the energy that the ship has. And not all split ships will have such a strict weapon selection, but some ships needed to be that way to make the whole faction be balanced better against all other factions. So you might have factions who have a chance to get very good fighter guns, but then their corvette gun may be fixed, so they can only use one or two types, which are not very powerful. But each faction has or should have access to certain more powerful or less powerful guns on when you take their whole ship roster into account. So the split, for example, have a very powerful frontal weapon selection when it comes to their frigates. They usually have more powerful guns in the front than other factions. But these other factions might have better weapons for their corvettes and stuff like that. And as I said, there is also a bit of randomness. And the weapons have also been rebalanced a bit to increase the variety, because certain weapons haven't been used by the factions before. For example, the plasma burst generator, it was just too energy intense for most fighters. And that made the split, if they would have used this gun, very ineffective when the player is present in sector, because ships would instantly run out of laser energy and then be ineffective during the rest of the battle. So I have rebalanced these weapons a bit. It is still more powerful than your average laser, but it's not that extreme anymore, so that allows the split to use this gun. And to make sure that they do use it, and therefore giving the split more flavor and uniqueness, their fighters are actually limited to this gun. So that might seem strange at first, but I think this is really a good change to make the factions more unique and also balanced. The Boron, for example, have an entirely new fighter weapon, which was a Terran weapon before. I just completely rebalanced the stats to give them their unique faction laser. So you also got a special look during these battles, and you can recognize the factions. And it's not as much of a great mishmash mix, because everyone uses the same random mix of weapons. And the weapons that can be used by these ships are generally balanced better for their energy loadout. So ships cannot mount these super inappropriate heavy weapons anymore, because all that was an exploit. You could use that to make them very effective during out-of-sector battles when the player is not present, because during these battles only the raw numbers count, and stuff like accuracy or energy requirements aren't taken into account. And now this should be toned down, so you don't really have a reason to leave the system and make your fleet more effective. Your ships can generally only mount a reasonable weapon, or a set of reasonable weapons. An exception are Terran ships, to make them a bit more special, so they are still following the old rules and they have a lot of flexibility. But the faction ships are actually very, very restricted. And I know not everybody will like that, but I think it's for the better. But that's also the reason why I'm testing this mod before releasing it.